I realized my husband had relapsed again. I remember being in my bedroom by the side of the bed, just collapsing, literally collapsing to my knees on the floor, wailing and crying and just hysterical. There was no more that I could do. I was giving up. There was nothing I could do to save my marriage anymore, to save our family, even to save myself. Like, I was just absolutely broken. I cried out to God with everything I had in me, and I lifted up my hands and I just said to him, I cannot do this anymore. It was just this overwhelming sense of peace. Like, I got you. I know you don't know what you're doing, but I know what I'm doing. And I never felt God like that.
Hey there, friend. Thanks for joining me on Mom's Grab Coffee, where we're helping you trust God through all the ups and downs of life. I'm your host, Hannah Lapsansky, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're talking about finding God again with Melissa Neeb of Faith in the Mess and Never Empty Nest. She's going to share her journey of how God delivered peace and protection when she became unexpectedly pregnant in her early 20s. A few years later, she faced another battle when she found herself drowning, trying to save her marriage and family from her husband's alcohol and drug addiction. It was then that she found God again, which led to a monumental transformation in herself, her husband, and her family. Her words of hope near the end of the episode are going to fill you up. Whether you're experiencing a similar circumstance as Melissa, or you're just struggling to get by every day with your kids, your job, your marriage, or anything else going on in your life, it's something all of us needs to hear. So please stay tuned for that. And without further ado, grab your coffee and get ready to be encouraged. This is Melissa's story. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me on Mom's Grab Coffee. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you have a really powerful testimony. I only know a little bit, and I'm so excited to dig in a little deeper. I think it's going to be really raw and real and just a really amazing testimony of how God rescued you. Mm-hmm. So before we dive into that story, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a mom of 2 teenagers. One of them, my son, is in college. My daughter will be turning sweet 16 next week. I am a wife. My husband and I have been together for 20 years. I'm a teacher, writer, artist, photographer. I love doing anything creative, I guess.
Wow, yeah, I think you've covered all the bases. All right, so today we're going to talk about how you survived your husband's disease of addiction while raising your kids and then finding God, again, through all of that. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be super powerful. Could you take us back to that hard place? What did it look like to navigate your husband's disease of addiction while raising your kids?
Yeah, so we met in our early 20s. And 21 years old, we were both drinking at the time, obviously, and going out to the bars all the time and just having a good time. But at the same time, there was a lot of chaos and just a lot of arguing and heavy stuff for us just meeting and starting to date. We got pregnant with my son fairly early in the relationship, actually, and we weren't married yet, weren't even planning to get married. And I think the first time I really saw God show up for me was seeing my pregnancy test turn positive. It was never something that I ever could have imagined. I grew up in the church, went to church, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, the whole 9 yards, my whole childhood. And getting pregnant before I was married was never in how I thought my life was going to turn out, basically.
And did you know God? I mean, you knew God, but did you have any kind of relationship with him? Was he part of your life at the time?
So I knew God. Growing up, I would say I had the belief, but the actual relationship part didn't come until much later. So that was really kind of the first blip where I saw God really show up. Like I was devastated. I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know if my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, and I would even stay together. I didn't know what his reaction was going to be. But in that moment of sitting on the bathroom floor, seeing that pregnancy test turn positive, realizing that I was growing a baby inside of me, he was in that room. And I get goosebumps as I say that because there was no hesitation on my part what I was going to do. I knew in that moment what God wanted me to do. I knew that this baby was a miracle and he was going to do amazing things in his life. So there was no question for me that I was going to have the baby, regardless of what that looked like. And God just was with me every day, every step of the pregnancy, through all my fears and insecurities. I mean, he was just right there.
And what did God's presence in that moment when you were holding a positive pregnancy test, what did that feel like? Like, how did you know it was God?
It was just this overwhelming sense of peace. Like, I got you. I know you don't know what you're doing, but I know what I'm doing. And it's all going to be okay. And you're going to figure it out as we go. And I'm going to be here with you every step of the way. And I never felt God like that my whole childhood up until that moment. It was like his presence really became tangible for me in that moment.
And did it surprise you? Like that overwhelming feeling of peace?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think as a child, I was very insecure. I was very unsure about things. I never really had strong convictions about anything. I never believed that my voice mattered, my opinion mattered. So yeah, to have that strong of a connection, it was just mind-blowing.
And so throughout your pregnancy, you said he showed up over and over again. Can you walk through more of the details of that?
I remember just taking a bath and seeing my belly grow, and the bath was it was time with my baby, and it was time with God too. And I just saw how I was growing and how he was keeping him safe, keeping me calm, and baby was healthy. I was healthy throughout the entire pregnancy. He just kept reminding me in all these small little ways that we were going to be okay and he was going to take care of us no matter what my circumstances looked like, what my relationship with my boyfriend looked like. He was going to be there, and that's how I knew that I could do it. It was through his power, truly.
Yeah, especially in that kind of situation where you really don't know what the future will hold with your relationship, with your finances, with maybe even your education. There's no one else you could point to but God.
Yep, that's exactly it.
And so during this time, were there practical things you were doing to press into God and feel his presence, or did it feel more like God kept showing up?
I think for me at that time, because I hadn't nurtured that relationship yet, I hadn't found God in a really concrete way yet. It was still pretty abstract to me, even growing up in the church and everything. I think he just kept showing up and reminding me. It's like, okay, you got me, you got me. And then all throughout the years, I just kept getting that reminder. Up until a couple of years ago was really when I saw it come to fruition.
So at what point did the addiction part of your story enter?
It was really right from the beginning, although I didn't know it. I didn't know that my husband was an alcoholic addict. When I met him, I knew that he drank a lot. I knew that he occasionally experimented with drugs in the past, but I had no idea. I couldn't have known how bad it was going to get. So really, right from the beginning, he was drinking a lot. We both were. And then after I had our son, I tapered off and he kept going. Almost 3 years later, I got pregnant with our daughter. Him and I were engaged at the time, planning a wedding, and we ended up having to move the wedding up because we wanted to be married when our daughter was born.
Mm-hmm.
That was really important to us. And then things really unraveled quickly after that. The pressure of a second baby, finances, living situation, all of it I think it was just so overwhelming for my husband. And he had a botched surgery right after my daughter was born. And he just spiraled into addiction at that point. He started using cocaine, and then it turned to crack, and it was just on from there.
How did you cope through that? Because you had 2 little kids at that time,
Yeah.
right? Which is, hard in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so how did you cope through this part of your journey where you're trying to now take care of 2 little ones as well as your husband's growing addiction?
Well, I was hanging on by a thread, honestly. Things got really bad. I can't sugarcoat that at all. I spiraled into depression and anxiety and PTSD, health issues. I was constantly going to the doctor, constantly sick. And I couldn't figure out why. Well, it's obvious to me now why I was under so much stress, trying to raise, my beautiful little babies and keep track of my husband, not knowing anything about addiction, trying all the things to get him to quit, bargaining and threatening to leave and watching his money and taking his car keys away, and none of it worked. So I wound myself up into a frenzy trying to fix it, trying to change him, and that didn't work. And that went on for a while. He went to treatment a few times, and I thought that was going to be the difference, but it wasn't. So at that point, we started trying different recovery groups. He's going to AA, I'm going to Al-Anon. He's going to NA, I'm going to Nar-Anon. And we did that pretty successfully for a few years, but there were still relapses in there, still really bad valleys during that period.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just desperately trying to hang on as best I can.
You said Nar-Anon, and what are those organizations?
So Al-Anon is the support group for family members. It's kind of like the partner to AA.
Okay.
Same thing with Nar-Anon. It's the partner to NA. Like AA is for the alcoholic and Al-Anon is for the family member or friend who is trying to navigate their loved one's addiction or alcoholism.
Got it. Okay. So you were both in it together, and you were supporting him by joining an organization that helps families navigate.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I was trying to control everything and everybody because I was really feeling desperate and out of control. I was out of control myself. They say that the family member of the addicted person takes on those same traits that the addict or alcoholic has. So the alcoholic is manipulative, the family member becomes manipulative. The alcoholic lies, the family member lies, tries to manipulate, tries to get him to do what they want him to do, and it goes on and on and on. So the support groups really helped. My kids they went to private school their entire lives, so they had the faith background, and we really weren't going to church all that often. Like I said, I had the belief, but I did not have the relationship, not for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband actually was an atheist for a lot of years. So that was another stumbling block in our family and in our marriage, was his unbelief.
So what happened to the faith that you were building when you were pregnant with your first child?
The faith that I was building, it was really sporadic. So when things were bad, I would run to God. When things were good, I didn't really pay much attention.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of took it for granted, I guess. Yeah, it was just kind of those rock bottom moments where I went running back to God and, please help me. Why isn't the situation any better?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing all the things that we're supposed to do. We weren't, obviously. But yeah, there was a lot of years of just very slow seed planting. God works very slowly sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
not in our time, clearly.
Yep.
Because I wanted it fixed now, and when it didn't get fixed now, I was angry and frustrated and resentful for a lot of years,
Mm-hmm.
Wondering why God didn't just take it away. So there was kind of a very strong pull in me over that period of time. It was like, I don't know, at least 10 years, maybe 15 years of, I want to believe, but I can't believe because the situation is too overwhelming and I just don't see God in it, but then sometimes I did, and it was just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's hard, being consistent in what we are doing to press into God, because you're exactly right. When we're at rock bottom, and I know personally for myself, when I'm at rock bottom, it's very easy to go to God, say, God, I need you. Please step in, help me fix this, help me heal. But then when things are going okay, or even if it feels like we can fix it or I can do this myself, then it's harder to remember that, hey, God's there to help too.
Yeah. I think a lot of the other issues that were going on during that time that really made me doubt God, question God, was the fact that my husband was so strongly against the kids in my faith. So if he would even hear the word God or Jesus or anything to do with faith, he would scoff and he would joke about it, and sometimes he would even get angry and say, that's your belief, that's not mine. You guys need to just leave it alone. Leave me alone. Quit bringing it up. And so it really became a point of contention even in our marriage. I remember my kids crying themselves to sleep at night saying, Daddy's not going to be in heaven with us. Just truly heartbreaking moment. And at the same time, I knew that I was failing them too, because I was waffling back and forth a lot. I was being influenced by what he was saying, and I didn't want to get into fights with him. And so I really kind of stopped letting my light show. I was hiding it, questioning it, doubting it myself. So yeah, that was not a very easy time for a long time.
And at what point did you start seeing a shift?
Let's see, it was about 2.5 years ago. And I remember the moment, another rock bottom moment. I realized my husband had relapsed again. I remember being in my bedroom by the side of the bed, just collapsing, literally collapsing to my knees on the floor, wailing and crying and just hysterical in that moment, because there was no more that I could do. I was giving up. There was nothing I could do to save my marriage anymore, to save our family, even to save myself. Like, I was just absolutely broken in that moment. And I cried out to God with everything I had in me, and I lifted up my hands and I just said to him, I cannot do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. Take it. It's all yours. My life is yours. The situation is yours. I can't do it anymore. I cried for a few more minutes, and I felt a very subtle wave of peace come over me, a stillness. I can't really explain it, but I stopped crying and I was still, and I prayed for a few more minutes, and then I went to bed and I slept, and I felt the shift in me at that moment. I knew things were going to be different, and things didn't change right away. They didn't, magically. His addiction didn't go away the next day or anything like that, but one step after another, I could see God in every single step from that moment on. And it's been, oh my goodness, I never could have even imagined the journey that I would go on over these, 2.5 years. So that was really my reawakening moment.
And when you surrendered to God at that moment, what were you wanting him to do and what were you expecting him to do?
I knew in that moment that it wasn't going to be on my timeline. He wasn't going to take Jason's addiction away. It wasn't going to be my plan. So I was basically surrendering to him the timeline. Because I always had a very distinct idea in my mind of what that timeline should look like. Like he should go to treatment and get sober and never use again. And then, everything's going to be good and we're going to have this amazing marriage, and life just doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
So it was really the timeline that I was surrendering, and also myself. Like I wasn't willing to be quiet about my faith anymore. I wasn't willing to hide it anymore. And I wasn't willing to go without God for not one more day.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah. So let's get into all the good stuff. What was that journey?
So about a week after that, this is a really very ironic story, but you see where God shows up in all of these things. So during one of his relapses, I had called the police and they came to our house, and one of the police officers mentioned a program called Celebrate Recovery to my husband, and he mentioned it to me. He talked about how it's a Christ-centered 12-step program. It's different from AA in that way. It's faith-based. So after that, we decided to go and try it. So we went to our first Celebrate Recovery meeting together, and it was life-changing. The moment we opened those church doors, it was life-changing. Just the people welcomed us with open arms, hugging us. They didn't even know us. They were hugging us right away, welcoming us, talking about God, getting all excited and fired up, and we just felt at home in that moment. And we started going regularly. We joined 12-step groups, both of us, our own 12-step, one for women, one for men. And I just met some really amazing people, and they really taught me what faith lived out looks like in a real way.
And the fact that your husband was open to this when he got even angry when you talked about faith.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a God thing?
Yeah, he had his own moment of experiencing God. This was a few years actually before my rock bottom moment. He found God in treatment, actually. So his journey with God really started about 5 years ago, and my journey back to God started about 2.5 years ago.
Wow, amazing. So you guys can walk through this Celebrate Recovery program together.
Yeah, and then we had Celebrate Recovery, so we had that foundation, and then, pandemic and all these other tumultuous things are happening in the world, and thank God that we had both found God again, for one, had a support group in place, two. It just shows me in such an abundant way how God just shows up and gives us exactly what we need. The people that I met that I never would have met, and joining a leadership team. I've been seriously afraid of public speaking my entire life, and another way that God shows up and uses people that have weaknesses and have fears and are incredibly imperfect. He uses all of that. He uses our weaknesses to show his power. And he's done that through me, because every time I feel unqualified or unworthy, he's telling me, no, you are going to do this in my power. And I do.
Yeah, and you're impacting thousands of women with what you're doing on Facebook and some of your other channels to share your story, your brokenness. So yeah, he's using it for sure. Yeah. And we're having this conversation that will bless people as well. So that's amazing.
Yes, it is so amazing.
So where do you think you, your husband, your family would be had you not surrendered to God at that moment?
We for sure would be living in the same chaos, in broken relationships, a broken marriage, our kids' relationship with my husband. Their relationships were broken. There was no trust, so much heartache that they've experienced over the years. But with God, there's forgiveness and there's grace and there's mercy and there's a fresh start every single day, no matter how badly we mess up. Every day is brand new and the slate is wiped clean. And it's such a beautiful thing, just watching my kids develop a relationship again with their dad and watching him be sober and be the man that I always knew he could be. I mean, it's just, there's miracles, so many miracles along the way.
So if you could sum it up, who is God?
God is everything, absolutely everything. He is my hope. He is my redeemer, my protector, my friend. I think ultimately that is what I had to learn over all of those years is God is my friend. Like, he just wants to talk to me and know me, and he wants me to know him. It's just such a beautiful relationship now. I couldn't have done anything over the last few years that he's empowered me to do without him. Like, it is all him, my social media platforms that I created and just all the creative work that I do, my photography and stuff, just seeing his fingerprints all over nature and all over words. And it's just so beautiful.
And I love the fact that he was chasing you when you were pregnant with your first son, right? And then you kind of fell away again, but he never left. He was always there.
Yeah.
Right there to meet you when you surrendered back to him. So I think that's such a beautiful part of your story.
There is a song that I heard when I first went to Celebrate Recovery, and it's a song about God's goodness chasing me. And I remember just breaking down in tears because it became such a truth to me in that moment, how God had been chasing me for all those years.
So now that you have a relationship with God, what are some of the things that you're doing from a practical sense to stay close to him and keep reminding yourself that he is there, he is your friend?
Yeah, that is something that really changed over the last 2.5 years. It no longer became something I had to do or anything like that. I started doing devotions every day, reading the Bible. Not every day. I'm certainly nowhere near perfect, but I like to write down passages that I love and just kind of meditate on them and focus on just one passage at a time instead of trying to speed read. Devotions every day. I listen to worship music probably more than anyone should. It's on all the time. I love it so much. Love it. Yeah, in the car and at work. I pray a lot. That's another thing that I hadn't done in years is I pray throughout my day. Funnily enough, one of the times that I pray, and I always set myself up to do this, is when I go to the bathroom. It's quiet and just a quick, God, keep me centered. God, take away this resentment. God, give me patience, all day long. Every time I step into the bathroom, I am praying. something really simple and quick, but it just gives me that constant connection to God all day long.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do, especially, there's always so many things going on in our lives. Taking those micro moments to say a quick thing to God and stay connected and plugged to Him is so great. I love how you're doing that. It's something I have to remind myself to do too. Kind of like a habit. You have to keep doing it to make it into something that just feels so natural and that you're doing it without even knowing you're doing it.
Yes. And another thing I always do, I have about a 7-minute drive to work. And I made a vow to myself every morning. The radio stays off and I just pray for 7 minutes while I drive to work. And that really centers and focuses me for the day. I ask God for strength for whatever the day brings, because it's all a mystery. I never know. And bad things always happen. Good things always happen. And I just always ask Him to be with me and give me strength and remind me to be grateful for the blessings along the way too.
Yes. Yes, the gratitude.
Yes. Oh, such an important thing.
Yeah. I find myself some days, the really hard days, I'm really down to the basics. Like, God, thank you that I'm breathing. Because sometimes it's hard. It's really hard.
Yep. Thank you for another day. That's all I got.
Right. Yeah. That's a big thing. We may underestimate it, but it really is a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Melissa, could you take a moment to encourage moms right now who are struggling? Perhaps they are in a similar situation where their loved ones are addicted to something. Maybe they themselves are struggling with addiction. What are some things that you'd like to say to them?
Oh, man. I just want to say to you moms, one, you are stronger than you know. You are so much stronger than you know. And God is never for a second not with you. He can empower you to do things that you can't even imagine. He can, oh my goodness, He can move mountains. He can change hearts. He can turn circumstances around. And it might not happen exactly how you see it in your timetable, but please just hang on. Stay faithful to Him, and He is always going to be faithful to you. He is watching over your situation. He has your loved one. You can let your loved one, surrender your loved one to God because God's already got them. Surrender yourself to God because He already has you. Keep doing the little things. Find support. Find a support group. God gives us so many different tools. It's not just about going to church necessarily and praying, although those are necessary things. Find some support no matter what you're going through. It's just so important.
Beautiful words, Melissa. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Awesome. So before we wrap today, I'd love to give moms a place to connect with you. Where can they go?
They can connect with me on Facebook. I have 2 different blogs. One of them is Faith in the Mess by Melissa Neeb on Facebook, and then my other blog is Never Empty Nest. And then you can find those on Instagram as well.
We'll have all of those links in the show notes. All right, Melissa, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been such a great conversation, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me.
How amazing is it that God continues to chase us when we turn away from Him? That He gives us grace when we surrender to Him after trying desperately to control situations and circumstances ourselves. I just love what Melissa said. God is never for a second not with you. So how do we stay close to Him, especially when our days can feel incredibly overwhelming and it can seem like we never have time to ourselves? Well, do what Melissa does. Pray every time you go to the bathroom. How often do you go to the bathroom? Stay with me. I have a point, and we're all mom friends here, so I'll start. I probably go every 3 hours. Maybe more if I'm good about drinking water. So if I'm awake for 16 hours, I have a minimum of 5 opportunities to pray. Little bit of math, but my point is this. Whether it's a quick tinkle or you're warming up that seat, take a moment to pray. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be eloquent. Melissa shared some of the things that describe God. He is her protector. He is her redeemer. He is her friend. So if you're not sure what to say, thank him for those things. So maybe the bathroom isn't a place where you can get some privacy. I see you, moms. What are some other daily routines that you can use to connect yourself back to God every day? Is it the commute to work? Before or after school pickup and drop off? Is it when you take that first sip of coffee in the morning? Maybe while you're putting on your makeup or brushing your teeth. Whatever those routines are, long or short, find the micro moment in them to keep yourself connected to God throughout your day. And second, practice gratitude. This can be especially tough when we're in a waiting season. Sarah Lango, my guest from episode 11, said it beautifully. It can be easy to forget the small things when you're waiting for the big thing, but we have to recognize the little miracles. So while you might be waiting for a big thing, what can you be thankful for in your life today? And moreover, how can we thank God for all that He is, all that He is doing, and all that He will do? Our minds can often speak louder than God, so I encourage you to write out what you're thankful for and then say it out loud. When you say it, it gives it even more power. A number of my past guests have spoken about the power of vocalizing your prayers. That includes what you're grateful for as well. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. Transformation can happen when you surrender to God. Like Melissa said, if she never took that step of faith and surrendered, she would be stuck in a circumstance that was suffocating her, her husband, and her family. And remember, God's timing is not our timing. Melissa didn't see change right away, but she trusted God to be her redeemer, her protector, her hope, and her friend. And you know what? He delivered. To connect with Melissa, check out her Facebook and Instagram pages, Faith in the Mess by Melissa Neeb and Never Empty Nest. The links are on momsgrabcoffee.com/13. If you're finding hope from these amazing testimonies on the show, could you take a second to rate the show 5 stars wherever you're listening right now? Or if you have 2 seconds, could you write a review? And if you've written one already, thank you so much. They are so encouraging to me. All right, that's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in, friend. You're awesome, and I so appreciate you. I'm Hannah Lapsansky, and I can't wait to grab coffee again with you next time.